All right, cool. So I guess we can get started. Jason, did you want to go through the example notebook, or do you want to do the questions first?
I guess we can do the questions first. I can talk like high level about the example notebook. Maybe
Right.
we can do another time for like a full walkthrough, but we should definitely talk about it.
Yeah. Let's do the questions. I give them it's like not a secret. I give the questions everybody in advance so they have a chance to think about it. So hopefully that means we get better answers from our special guests. I hope that's true today. So the pressure's on, Jason.
Yeah.
So your name is Jason. That's like cool. We have a bunch of Jasons. Were you like the fifth Jason or something?
For a long time, everybody would always say Jason in Zoom, and they're always talking about Jason P, of course.
That's right.
He seems to build everything. And yeah.
The architect.
I am the other Jason.
So we have a bunch of Jasons. That's cool though. Like it's just the way it is in America, the common name thing. Jason, where do you live?
I live in New York City. In the next couple of months, I'm going to move to the suburbs of Connecticut. Become a suburban dweller.
You have an interesting background. You and I talked a little bit about it in DMs, but what do you do for a living now? And how did you get here?
Yes, so it is interesting. I guess, so right now I'm working on a startup called CrowdCent, which kind of has a broad mission of crowdsourced investment management. So that's, in any sense that we can facilitate or enable, participate in, or build these kind of tournament style investment funds, we want to be there. So there are a few different business models that go into that. First, our kind of core is building our own forums to have kind of like the fundamental investors version of Numerai, where you can write a lengthy explanation for why you think a stock will go up or down, and then we'll build machine learning models on top of people's submissions to the forum to pick the best ideas. We'd like to partner with other communities. There are a lot of kind of investment forums out there, and we're talking to a few of them to give our models to that community. And then there's now this Numerai Signals angle, which is we can build our own models just for that, stake on that, and also trade on them. So that's kind of what CrowdCent is about and what I'm working on. It's multi-headed, and it can still go in a lot of directions. We're kind of in building mode still.
Right.
But that's the current route. And how did I get there?
That kind of relates to the second question. Like, what compelled you to pursue your current job?
Right. What I'm doing now is kind of the intersection of everything I've done up until this point. So my background is in fundamental equity research. I worked at an investment bank covering like sustainability, industrials, and writing like buy, sell, and hold reports, doing kind of in-depth analysis and financial statement modeling, things like that. And that was on the sell side. And I realized, things can get a bit more quantitative than just me writing a report every few weeks. And so I got into this what's now called alternative data. So some of the projects I worked on was like I covered the LED industry. So Home Depot was selling all these new LED bulbs.
Right.
And so I would scrape the Home Depot website. I would hit every zip code, and they would list how much inventory they had. So you could see like how LED bulbs were selling. So that was my first kind of foray into the more quantitative side. Then I really got into data science. I went to grad school to get a master's and kind of feel more like an expert in machine learning. I focused on natural language processing there. So here you can kind of see the merging of the two. You have the fundamental side, and now you have the natural language processing to understand the fundamental kind of text. And I worked at a large hedge fund doing some more quantitative work. I was a data scientist and an investment analyst. That was in like a TMT, tech media telecom portfolio. And so there I was doing things like similar to signals, not quite, but like creating filters, top of funnel to give a better subset of a stock universe to a portfolio manager or to an analyst. And I did some other stuff with alternative data, like credit card data, email receipts, to kind of triangulate public company earnings and revenues. I think that's kind of a big thing going on in the industry. I don't know how value added is, but
we'll figure it out eventually.
Right. And so kind of that experience, the combination of all of those led me to this obsession with crowdsourced investment management. And
well, good on you for taking the plunge and doing it live, so to speak. I've always had an entrepreneurial streak, but lack the risk tolerance. Full of ideas, but I don't have the ability to take the dive. So good on you for doing that. But
thanks.
Surely you don't just work for fun. What do you do for fun? Like, who is Jason outside of what we see?
I do work a lot for fun. I spend a lot of time in front of the computer doing this type of stuff, but the crypto scene has been heating up. I like following that. A bit of a gamer. I'll play some Call of Duty, PUBG, some NHL. Like to go on hikes and things. That's why I'm moving to Connecticut, I guess. And yeah.
Okay, so another workaholic. Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Quite a few of us around. I get it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how weird are you?
That's a tough one. I think that's for other people to judge. Some of my answers might let other people judge that. So we'll see. But I would say I don't think being weird is a bad thing.
I agree.
I think being weird is a good thing. I think everybody's weird. So
everybody is weird. That's right. I think so.
Yeah.
Tim's asking Valorant. I don't know what Valorant is. Valorant.
Oh, a game, maybe.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't play Valorant.
Okay. What are you not very good at, Jason?
I'm not very good at these types of questions. It's like what's your biggest weakness?
We're trying to get to know you. Let us
I'm
in.
just too organized. I'm bad at being disorganized. That's how you should answer those interview questions.
So you're highly organized.
What? I would say I'm not that quantitatively minded. I think I have to work pretty hard at figuring that stuff out. I think I'm sort of better verbal reasoning if I were to take like an aptitude test on it. But that just means I work a little bit harder to figure out the quantitative side, and I try to use my other skills to enhance that.
Yep, I relate very closely to that. I'm not a fantastic test taker, but I figure it out. And yeah, it takes a little more work because I don't have a strong quant background. But my curiosity is what helps me overcome a lot of those challenges, and it seems like you're pretty similar in that vein. Grit and determination will get you very far. That's the good news.
Right.
This is a fun one. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Yeah, this one's easy for me. So it's motivate, hydrate, dominate.
Motivate.
There's a period after each one of those.
Okay.
And those are the 3 cardinal principles of life, really. It's taken me a long time to come to that set of words, but it's how you should live your life, and it should be on probably most billboards.
But why is hydrate second?
It's sequential. So first you got to wake up, you got to motivate yourself and have passion for what you're doing. Then once you are motivated, you should drink some water to keep yourself going, because we're all made of water.
Indeed, we're blood bags.
Right. And then once you have those first 2 steps done, just, go out and dominate.
How much water a day do you drink?
Good question. I don't know. I think you should aim for like a gallon,
Woof. I'm woefully below that.
Fill a gallon jug in the morning and then just aim to be finished with it by the end of the day.
Wow, that's a lot of water. But yeah, hydration is pretty important. I will agree with that. I'm pretty bad at it. So let's talk about Numerai a bit. I think you've been around a while. When did you start participating?
I haven't been participating for too long. I've been around longer. I think I just started submitting a little after Kazutsugi was released. So maybe a little over a year. I've been following it forever. I think I made my account in 2016, like pretty soon after the Medium post. And then I just kind of watched how the tournament was progressing from log loss and switching those objective functions. But I didn't start submitting till last year.
Okay. I had to check the meme channel because OFS just posted a funny one. Sorry, I digress. So you started at least following along around the time that I did, but you waited a long time to submit. Do you have any regrets on that?
Yeah. I think the only way to really learn this stuff is to do it. That's my general like data science advice as well. But yeah, I wish I had just submitted as soon as I had signed up.
Yeah.
And
so that's kind of related. You said you saw the Medium post, so that's how you found out about Numerai?
That's right. I saw the Medium post, and I had already been kind of like thinking about this type of stuff. And reading it, it was like finally somebody like gets this and is doing it.
Yep.
So it was pretty exciting.
So given that you kind of were around in 2016, what do you wish you had known then to help you start sooner?
Well, my answer to the question of what do I wish I knew was going to be about feature neutralization, but I don't think anybody was ever talking about anything like that back then. I wish everybody knew about feature neutralization back then, though. So maybe that is still a good answer.
So another person pushing feature neutralization, and I'm still hesitant. So I guess I need to move on that. So why don't you go ahead and answer the question the way you want to, since you're prepared to say something.
So let's assume you asked, what do I wish I knew when I started out?
What do you wish
a year
you
ago
knew
instead?
when you started out a year ago?
Well, I wish I knew about feature neutralization. Thank you for asking. I really do think it's like unreasonably effective. It's and we've just kind of scratched the surface. I think Michael Oliver's latest like search for the right kind of linear aspects to remove is really cool, and we're getting closer to just making that whole process end to end. And I'm sure we'll be able to optimize for what the right kind of proportion to neutralize will be based on your model. I think that'll be pretty cool. And it really is, it's just such an interesting problem, and I think it can enhance almost any model.
Challenge accepted. I will, I'm going to work on that, I promise. So why do you think people quit? Why don't they stick around?
This one is tougher for me because I had the opposite problem. Once I started, I don't think I can stop now. It was the hurdle of getting that first submission in that was tough for me. I would think once you have a pipeline and once you've submitted, like the incremental cost to just doing it every week is pretty low. It may be discouraging if your scores are bad, but that's also part of the tournament design, is to have churn of like negative contributors.
Yep, I think so too. So it's really the upfront cost you think is a little significant. Hopefully the example scripts and things and the recordings I'm doing are going to help with that. So if that is a barrier, hopefully I can squash that a little bit. This one is probably why a lot of people are tuning in. What are your top 3 tips for the tournament?
So first would be motivate, and then 2 is hydrate.
I like it.
Yeah. Motivate, hydrate, dominate. You can answer like any question with that.
Sounds like it. I'm going to try that in an interview someday.
I think saving all your models and taking notes, taking notes is like a pretty common one, but saving all your models I think is important with the notes, because unless you can prove your model is garbage, then keep it, because you never know when new validation data is going to come out. You never know how you can layer in a mediocre model to an ensemble of okay models to add some less correlated insights, I guess. So that would be my first tip. And then somewhat related, my second tip is that one model is probably not enough on its own. I think most accounts should have ensembles. You should make as many models as you can. Once you save them, find out different combinations of those models in ensembling, try different ensembling techniques. Maybe you're just taking simple averages. Maybe you're stacking the models and feeding them into a meta model. But like the premise of Numerai is ensemble, and a meta model will do better. So I think we should assume the same for our own submissions. And then my third tip would be focusing more on your pipeline rather than the machine learning. That may sound a little weird, but if you can set up your pipeline to accept different parameters, you're just going to have a much easier time building and saving all of your models that you can later ensemble. So you should be able to have a way to use the same model with a bunch of different feature neutralization proportions and see how they do compared to each other. You should be able to have models select different columns and subsamples, all from basically the same line of code.
Okay, that's actually pretty good, because writing all that out over and over and over again is kind of annoying. Definitely. So the notes question comes up again, so just hang on to that a second, because that's a Slido question, and I definitely want to spend a little more time on it, but I'll do that in the Q&A. So what is your number one feature request or improvement for the tournament, my friend?
I have two for this. The first is, I think Wigglemuse said it, is percentile ranks. I think that's very important. We see correlation, but everybody's correlation tends to trend together. Not everybody's. I'd like to see the correlation between percentile rank and MMC. My guess is it's pretty highly correlated, and it seems like a no-brainer to add. That's what you should be tracking, how well you're doing compared to other people.
Yeah.
0.04 correlation could be good or bad any round. So
that's true. That's true. And if it's 0.04 correlation with everybody else, but you give it in a different way, that'll give MMC. And so it's not universally true that all the 0.04s have the same MMC, because it could be different. So yeah, I agree. I think that finding some way to associate that with MMC would be helpful. And you're right. Having the percentile rank is helpful. Although most of that information is available already. It's just third party. And that's Joe's dashboard. So,
and then I had
else that perhaps has a little higher impact.
Yes, my second one is, I guess, an improvement to the tournament would be adding new training data every week. I get there are definitely pros and cons to that. The cons being people have to retrain their models. I guess the pro is that you don't have to retrain your model. You can still use stale data. And the real pro is just to the fund. I think you should be adding more data. I think results will improve. There are some issues around validation there, but it seems like a pretty good bet.
Imagine that the data scientist asks for more data. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought?
Right.
I don't agree with you, but that's okay.
I'm happy to engage with that if you'd like to.
We can. Let's get through the questions, and we can argue to your heart's content. But I want to make sure that I get everything covered and get some questions in, because you've got some stuff to talk about with your example notebook.
Right.
So here's a controversial one. Who's your favorite team member?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's a fair question.
It's totally fair. Everybody gets asked this question.
But it's like asking like who your favorite like parent or kid is.
I don't care. I asked it. You got to answer it.
Well, I kind of non-answered it, but if I had to pick somebody, it would be who I've bothered the most, which is Jason.
Okay, Jason chooses Jason. We haven't had a vote for Jason in a while. I think it's because he hasn't been on to show his hair in weeks.
Right.
And so people forget that he's actually toiling away very hard in the background, quasi-anonymously, because he's absent from the streams. We'll forgive him this time. Good work, Jason. I know you worked really hard on Signals. So I think he was in earlier, but I don't see him in Zoom right now.
Yeah, so he ditched. Okay. The whole team is really great, honestly.
Oh, I agree.
But I've bothered
Aha!
him the most. He's had to deal with me.
He's in Twitch chat.
Oh, nice.
Now I know who you are, Jason. You're busted. So thanks. Thanks, Jason. You're doing good things, man. So you got to vote. That was your first one of the season, by the way. Maybe you'll answer this. This one's fairly new for the list. Where do you get new ideas for your models?
I can answer. I don't think I have a good answer. I think it's just the community and you guys, the forums. If you haven't tried, there are so many things to try. Learning to rank, feature neutralization, different types of nets, different types of loss functions in your nets. So there's plenty to do, and I haven't gotten to all of it.
Me neither.
I can't even think of where else I would look for. It's now become such a specific problem that the community is coming up with specific solutions, and I think that's the way to do it.
That was a very non-specific answer to say that you have specific things. I just want to point that out. What are you working on now?
What am I working on now? So NOMI retraining. I kind of think you have to do all your cross-validation again just to make sure that the parameters do actually transfer over. And you may, if you're going to check, you may as well retrain everything. So I'm doing that, which is fun. And I've been working on my personal signals models. That's kind of done. Now that CrowdCent is going to launch an institutional account, so I'm kind of overseeing that. We're going to build out 15 models and submit as an institution, as a company. I think that'll be really cool. And then the example notebook, I guess I had been working on, that's now done.
Nice.
But yeah.
Nice. This question is important for me because I'm trying to help people learn data science. What advice would you give to someone who wants to become a data scientist?
To become a data scientist, I think it's a cliche at this point that data science is mostly just cleaning data, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's like 80% cleaning data or something, 70%. That's what people say. And it's very true. And people need to understand that up front. And then once you do understand that, I think you need to find something you're passionate about to clean data around, because very little of it is going to be machine learning. And if you don't like what the data is or what it represents, then you're just going to, hate data cleaning all day. But if you like it, it'll turn into science. And find something you're passionate about and turn it into a project. Then it's something you can put in your portfolio and show people that you've worked on. And like I said earlier, this is all about just a hands-on experience, data science in general. So get your hands dirty. You can watch as many YouTube videos or Twitch streams as you want, but until you open up a Jupyter notebook, you're not going to get over that real hurdle.
Right. Right. I agree. Do a project, do the thing. And we said about data cleaning is right. You're going to spend a lot of time on it. For me, because of my research is, empirical finance, I don't really do the quant stuff, but the data cleaning process is a big, giant puzzle. And so in order to get my panel set up for research, I have to take very disparate data sets, merge them all together and get it into some semblance of a question that begs an answer, right? And that whole process to me is different every single time I do it. And I learn something every single time I do it. And the puzzle, like that is the reward. And so, yeah, it's a lot of work, but I just enjoy that process because it's a puzzle. So solving puzzles for me is rewarding. So that's just my aside on the data cleaning grudge, because it is a grudge, but it can be fun if you accept it that way. If you could step into my shoes, what would you ask yourself that I haven't so far?
I didn't come up with a good one for this.
Okay.
I don't know. I think you do a good job covering the necessary questions.
Well, I give you a chance to promote something if you like. And that's fine. So I did an excellent job. Thank you. I'll take that, put it in my tip jar. Do you have any book or paper recommendations for the folks?
The only papers I read are like NLP related. And I guess all of the sort of canonical papers around all of the the transfer learning progress that's happened in the last couple of years, those are good. So the papers, I guess the first one is even before that, is like word to vec and thinking about text in the latent space as a vector, and like how you can basically do arithmetic with text in space. It's really cool. And then once you understand embedding space, then figuring out this transfer learning stuff of natural language processing. The first paper with that was called ULM Fit. That was Jeremy Howard and Sebastian Reuter. And that was basically taking the advancements of computer vision, of transfer learning. You can pre-train a neural net on one domain and then continue to train it for another. So ULM Fit, and that was back when language models were still using like recurrent nets, LSTMs. Now they're all transformers. And I guess the transformer paper that's good is GPT and BERT. Those are probably the two to read there.
Why don't you tell us, like, big picture view about this example notebook you wrote and how people can use it to develop a model for signals?
Sure. So like you said, it's just Yahoo data. I actually think the data is probably the biggest thing to still add on to and fix. It's pulling in some tickers that are wrong. Some of the data isn't fully clean, but it's a good start. It's a good framework. The goal of the notebook is to basically take you from just 0 to submission in a few minutes. And so it reads in pricing data from Yahoo Finance for all about 5,000 eligible tickers in a signals submission. It'll take the price data from like 2002 to today. And well, maybe let's take a step back. The goal of signals at the end of the day is to predict a 4-day trading return with a 2-day lag before those 4 days. So it's kind of weird to think about, but
you're predicting returns.
You're predicting relative rankings of returns.
But you predict returns first, transform it into a rank.
I like to think about it as just predicting rank right away, because if you can kind of neutralize within each era, you should see better results. But so you're predicting 4-day trading day rankings, and then that's neutralized to something you don't even know about. But what I'm trying to get at here is, in order to predict 4-day trading returns, what is probably most predictive of that? And right. In my mind, I would say, well, probably like the week before, 4-day trading results before that.
So you're a momentum trader.
Momentum trading, and probably most people think about that. It's probably the easiest, and that's basically what the example notebook does.
Jagadish and Titman, 1993. This is a reference paper for momentum.
Yeah, so once we have all that price data, we calculate RSI, which, like you said, is basically a momentum indicator. It can fluctuate from between 0 and 100. The general rule of thumb is if the RSI is above 70, it's overbought. So you would sell the stock, and if it's under 30, you would sell the stock because it's oversold.
1 second, we got a little audio glitch there. What? Try one more time.
Okay.
I think it just picked up an open mic or something. Sorry.
Yeah, there's construction going on outside.
You're okay. Now you're good. Your audio is fine now. Sorry.
All good. Where was I?
RSI over 70 overbought.
Under 30 oversold. And so some people will just make an algorithmic trading rule out of that, right, and design that. Our idea here is, well, why don't we just let the machine learning model figure out what's important, what number is important. But to do that, we have to make this time series problem sort of cross-sectional. So once we have the RSI for each day, that's when we'll rank them into quintiles for that day. So if something was an RSI of 85, it's probably in a relatively high quintile for that era. And then what we'll do is, to make it cross-sectional, we'll kind of create an auto-regressive problem. We'll say the RSI quintile today was 0, yesterday it was 1, the day before that it was 0. And so you have the change of RSI quintiles as your features. And then you can do additional feature engineering on that. Object Science put in a cool library that turns any time series into like 3,000 columns based on doing all sorts of transformations. You can take the differences, you can take the log differences, you can take percentile changes and things like that. So once we have turned this time series momentum indicator into a cross-sectional problem, Numerai has targets. Again, that's just the relative rankings within each era. And we'll use the momentum feature set to predict this black box target. And you shouldn't expect like a high correlation similar to the main tournament. It's a hard problem. So one of the main problems to figure out is whether or not you've found something, or if you might just have a lucky streak. So part of that is going to be interpretability. So looking at, and this is maybe dissimilar from the Numerai tournament, you mentioned the bias, but I think it is important to see which features are feeding the model. And so with like an auto-regressive problem like this, you would expect the RSI today to be the most impactful, and then the RSI from yesterday to be a little less, and so on. And so we do see that in the feature importance scores. And that's how we know we're at least somewhat on the right track here. But
so far, all you've done with the example model is bring in pricing data. So there's also alternative data that people can bring in. Alternative data would be fundamental data, financial statement analysis, right? That's very hard to obtain, by the way, but technically it's available for free. Just good luck assembling a data set yourself.
Exactly. This Yahoo Finance library has some of that. It's going to be a little intensive to gather all of it, but if you have the patience and the internet speed, I think it's probably worth it.
Yeah, a lot of API calls.
Yeah.
So there's always the discussion. Pricing data is the most farmed data set in the world, and that is 100% true, because in academia that's like the primary data set for all the pricing studies that go on. So you have academics hacking through this, and then every quant fund in the world is using it too. So, how much signal could possibly be left with pricing data? But you're doing something completely different. You're not even doing pricing data. Tell us about your textual analysis stuff. Somebody wanted to know in Slido if you're using GPT-3.
Yes. So my personal models for signals actually don't use any NLP, at least not yet. It's all pricing, fundamental, some other data, but no NLP. I think the CrowdCent models are going to heavily leverage NLP. I guess to get to that GPT-3 question, we are not using GPT-3 specifically. We're using some language models on the experimental side, but I'm not sure what's cool about GPT-3 is how generalizable it is, but it won't necessarily get like state-of-the-art performance in each task. It just happens to be very good at almost all tasks. But then when you want a specific, maybe sentiment model or like named entity recognition, you'd probably fine-tune a separate model specifically for that task.
Very cool. Anything else on the example notebook? Any gotchas? Anything else you want to say?
I mean, I put a long list of like suggestions for improvement at
pretty
the
well
end.
documented. I have to.
And I think that's pretty important. I don't want people to think that they can just submit these example predictions and get a good score, because I don't think you can. And if you could, you wouldn't be able to for long. And that's like the definition. You're not going to find alpha on the public internet. So
not with RSI. Sorry.
Right, especially not with RSI. So I want people to know it is a simple notebook. I do think it's a really good framework though for how to think about it. Think about the signals problem in general, that is, which is try to create a data set that's similar to the Numerai tournament data set, but with your own data. And then once you do that, you probably already have a good pipeline, if you followed my tips, to create new learners for signals.
Let's do some Slido questions now that we've finished the business. The taking of notes, something that we talk about a lot here. Anonymous wants to know, people are talking about taking notes to be successful in this tournament, but really what kind of notes? So where is my notebook? It's around here somewhere. Let me see what I got. Oh no, I hit a button. What did I just do to myself? Oh, there we go. So this is my go-to notebook, right? This is just for research, really. But let me see what I have in here. I have notes about papers to read. I have some notes in here about Docker Windows. You must have Windows 10 Pro. In order to run Docker, you gotta have Windows 10 Pro.
I learned that the hard way, actually.
That's why I'm not using compute yet. I wrote must joblib dump anything that modifies the predict rows. So you have to, apparently I was looking at figuring out how to do Docker at that time. I have notes on meetings that I have with people. Like I take notes on lots and lots of stuff. Specific to the tournament though, I think that note taking is a habit of life in general. And so I don't want to tell you exactly what you should write down because you should be a note taker just as a best practice of life. But specific to the models that you run, you mentioned this a little bit. Save every model and take notes about that model. What did you do in your hyperparameter search? What was your hypothesis when you started the process of training this model? What was the overall sentiment at the time that you had? Were you doing this in the middle of a burn period? Were you motivated to find something uncorrelated because you were frustrated that all of your models were burning? Like that's what happened to me. That's why I did some model development. And so, think about mindset at the time. Take screenshots of your validation metrics. So I have a Word file with snip pictures of the output of the validation scoring. Nose of Capital says, I've had several notebooks on a lot of stuff. I also have one on the tournament, keeping all things done. Yeah, everything you've tried. Save all your code too. Document your code. Like I put in runtime sometimes. Like, wow, this thing took forever. I don't want to run this way. Maybe I need to optimize it. And I'll put a note, 3-hour runtime. Clearly I didn't optimize something. I thought it should run faster. I'll put notes about, what's going on in RocketChat. Like so-and-so said something about some modeling technique. I'll write that down so that I know an idea in the future because maybe I thought it was important. But note taking, I think, is just a life skill. So I don't want to tell you how to take your notes, but being a note taker will set you far apart from other people. Anything you want to add to that, guys? Even Michael Oliver, you want to chip in on that? You don't have to. You're good. He's like, yeah, man, I heard you. You're good. Thanks. Keeping you on your toes. Yeah. The flogging's coming. Don't worry, Michael. We got you. Got to get our weekly flog in.
I mostly take notes on how it did on validation, separate out validation 1, separate out validation 2, and things like that.
And compare it to the example predictions. The example predictions have been pretty good, but now where it was a top 30 model, now it's a top 130 model. So there's 100 models better. It hasn't been the case. Honeycomb says logging programmatically. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, but yeah. Document your code, like write notes to yourself. Like, I put the date, like I'll put in there, like, you save your notebooks where they auto save. That's not really helpful, but I'll put this, this day, this time, these are the parameters I use. This is the score that I got. And anything else, like the random seed I use, whatever, as much as I can to try to replicate it again. And, if I come back and look at it, in terms of joblib files, I even add the date and time to the file name. Like that's probably excessive because it's technically part of the the system when it saves it, but I think that you cannot take too many notes. I don't think that's possible. That's what I think. So I hope that answers the question. Taking notes to be successful in the tournament, what kind of notes? All the things. Anything that will help you in the future, because this is a long game. And so you may look back 6 months from now and need to retrain something that you haven't looked at in 6 months. I just did this. And the time that some of my job lib files were saved was different than my notes. I was like, well, that really sucks, because past me didn't do me any favors. I have no idea what I did now. And so I kind of had to figure out what was going on. It took a lot of time. Time's money. So try not to waste your own time. There's a question on signals. What do you recommend, creating our own target or training on the historical target? I'm not fully sure I understand that.
So Numerai does provide their targets, which are the relative rankings. But I think Richard has said before that, you try to make your own targets. I kind of agree. Try to make your own targets over either different time span or representing something similar to relative ranking, but it might not be exactly, or maybe you neutralize your rankings in a slightly different way. I would try both. The really tough problem about the tournament is even once you do validation on either your target or their target, your submissions are still going to be neutralized. So your validation scores are not going to be what your live scores are. And I don't have a specific answer to that question, except try both.
Try all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a much more complicated tournament than the regular machine learning tournament. Okay. So if you're just starting out, it's really hard. It's much harder than the regular tournament because you have to do your own feature engineering and you have to create your own data set. I don't have a whole lot to offer there. A, because I haven't had a whole lot of time to dive into signals. And B, because my priors are such that I don't want to use Yahoo data personally, because I've access to institutional grade data and it just bugs me to no end to know that I have this data and I can't use it. So that's what I have for that. Why are you so pro feature neutralization?
Well, it works. I mean, that's the real reason. It very clearly works. And I think we haven't seen what it can fully do. And that's it.
Are you training on a feature neutralized target, or are you removing the signals after the fact?
Yeah, I'm doing it after the fact. That just seems to be the easiest, and then you don't have to fully retrain.
Tim filled me in Twitch chat. He says it was more about data every week. Yeah, I'm totally out on that. Thanks, Tim. Because I'm kind of on the feature neutralization, but that's still a good topic. But let's go back to what we were really disagreeing on, because I think that's more interesting. Data every week, I'm out. Forget it. A, this is a monthly tournament, so if you give me weekly data, now I have to worry about autoregressive problems.
But you don't have to retrain. It can be completely optional whether you use that data. Well, that's good for the fun then. And I know you're always, why?
No, because you have monthly predictions. If you have weekly data at the end of the series and you use it to train on it, you're going to oversample that month. You're weighting at 4x compared to other months.
Right. It's possible that's a good strategy. I mean, it's possible. And you can always, mitigate that. If you're really concerned about it, then just release data monthly and don't have any overlap. But I think there are some strategies that do try to wait to more recent times anyway, if you make the assumption that, today's regime is going to be more similar to the most recent regime. That could blow up on you. But
yep.
But it's just more optionality. If you give people more data, they can train on it. They don't have to. You're saying that everybody will.
Of course.
And if everybody will, then you just have to make sure that the data we're given will actually improve people's scores. And I really think it would.
I would be okay evaluating on weekly data because that's essentially what we're doing. And I said that in a previous office hours. I said that it would be helpful if we were evaluated on those gap weeks so that we have some indication of the autoregressive nature of our prediction sets. Since we are making 4 predictions per month, right? But we're only seeing 1 observation per month. And so we're going to drift. Like if we have, again, there's like 4 weeks per month. We've trained on this one. So this one's a little bit different, but similar, a little more different, but similar, so like that's what I mean by that. It's going to be similar, but different. And you either, if you train on it, you oversample, but having those metrics out of sample as validation scores, I think would be really helpful, but I don't want to have the targets on it.
But what if you remove the overlapping problem and you say, okay, then we won't get weekly training data. We'll only get monthly training data. So there's no overlap.
Yes.
You don't have that problem. Then you're okay with it?
I'm okay with that. Yes. But
Okay.
the other 3 weeks that are part of that, I want to be evaluated on in the submission evaluation metrics.
Right. What if we got all weekly data for the old training data, and then the new data we got was also overlapped?
If they gave us all of that data, oof. I mean, as long as everybody had it, I guess I don't really have a problem with it, but I don't think people fully understand what it means to be that overfit.
That's true. We would need 100 gigabyte memory for our computers.
It would be a big problem, but also it would be seriously overfit because we're making month predictions with weekly data. The oversampling is atrocious. You'd have to hold out 75% of the eras per run, and your validation, it's a nightmare. I don't even want to think about it. I really don't. I think
I don't doubt that there are considerations like to take in.
I don't know. That's brutal. You would get a completely different model if you randomly selected the first week, the third week, the fourth week. Like, forget it. What if you accidentally oversampled only January's?
Then you may have a bad model.
Right.
Because
you got the
January. That should all be. I think that's all part of the process.
But with monthly data, we don't have to worry about that. The gaps are similar. The spaces are the same. The autoregressive problem still exists in the predictions, but it's not present in the training, or at least that's my hypothesis. JRB says data every week opens up the possibility of meta learning, which is huge. Okay, I'll take your word for it. Honeycomb says there will be massive model drifts. Yes, the drifting, we would diverge, not converge. And JRB further says, as it stands, our models have no way to learn from their mistakes. That's true. I'm just not sure that granularity of data is good. I mean, you have it for signals. So go nuts. Go on with your bad stuff.
I guess to nip it in the bud, I would say, taking all of your considerations into mind, we should have more data. And that's okay if it's not overlapped.
I think Numerai needs to protect us from ourselves. Right? Like a parent, because it's in their best interest to help us to not overfit and to give us evaluation data that's informative to help them.
But it's a bad long-term hedge fund strategy to never update your training data.
This I agree with you on,
and that's the fundamental issue.
Apparently Richard has determined that the training data is informative currently, because if it wasn't, I swear he would change it up. Right? And that's about it. I mean, they need backtest time, which I guess is technically forward, right? Because we don't know if they go backwards. I think they only come forwards on it. And it's 120 eras, right? And if it's similar to signals, let's just guess. It probably ends in 2012. I think that's probably safe. It gives them 8 years of testing and validating, plus the gaps in which we have validation 1 and 2. But if they give us all the backtest data, it really doesn't help them sell their own backtest. It becomes much less informative because we're training on it. It becomes problematic. What about that?
I get the idea from a backtest perspective, but from a live results perspective, more data is always going to be better. I think even if you're not training on Val 1 and Val 2, you should have some models that train on Val 1 and Val 2.
For your own information, yeah.
And it's in the same vein that we should be getting more data. That's all I got to say. And also the test set now, I brought it up a couple of weeks ago, Michael Oliver disagreed with me. It may have some look ahead bias now that some people are training on Val 1 and Val 2.
Yeah, especially with the gap between Val 1 and Val 2. It's possible, absolutely, that. But I don't know, you know, they're the ones looking at the submissions, and we have no insight into it. So that's what I got for you this week, folks. Thanks for hopping on. Thanks, everybody, and have a great week. See you in RocketChat. See you on Twitter.